Come join Melissa and her guests on the Chats from the Blog Cabin podcast. From North Carolina, this podcast will have you feeling like you've known these folks for years. Listen in as they chat about life, culture, current events, and more, all with a special Southern flair. Curl up with your favorite beverage and get ready to be entertained. Tune in now for a unique experience that's fun and insightful.
Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Chats from the Blog Cabin, the show where I virtually invite people into the blog cabin to chat about life. And today I'm joined by Aimee, who's a corporate mom coach. Now that is a big long word, Aimee, but before we talk about what you do, let's talk about who you are. Get us a little information about yourself.
Yeah. Well, first off, thanks for having me, Melissa. So my name is Aimee Greczmiel, and I'm founder and CEO of corporatemomcoach.com. And I basically left my 18-year corporate career. I was VP in the banking industry, and I left my career really to pursue what I consider to be a really strong pull and passion to really help empower women, particularly mothers, to manage both their career and their personal life. I had a kind of a big awakening myself when I became a parent at the age of 35, and it really threw me for a loop. And so I learned so many lessons through that process, through working with coaches and mentors myself. And I found some really, really valuable tools and assets that helped me along my journey. And I felt called to really create a business and share it with other women, particularly mothers, to help them through some of their struggles as well.
So what was the aha moment where you're saying, I can't be on this rat race anymore. I have to get out of the rat race?
Yeah, I think, prior to having my first child at the age of 35, my career was really, I love my career. I really did. But it was so much a part of my identity. And in many ways, I forgot who Aimee really was. And I just became consumed by my career, not only my time, which I was spending a lot of time in my career, but also my mental activity and my thoughts. I was always thinking about work, right? It was like I couldn't shut it off. And so when I had my daughter, it was like, okay, I really, really want to show up in an amazing way in this role as a mother. But I knew that my previous way of operating, of like go, 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 achieve, 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 wasn't really going to work for parenting a baby. And so I had to learn a different way. And there was no real blueprint or framework for that. I just knew I didn't feel right applying that mentality to my family life or to my motherhood experience, right? I wanted to savor it. I wanted to enjoy those sweet, special moments that you get when they're so young, and that you can get anytime really, but especially when they're young. And so I had to learn techniques and tools to kind of shift my own perspective and inner state so that I could really step into this, empowered place as a mother in this new chapter of my life.
Wow. So having that little baby girl, and I can just imagine, because I'm a mom of 3 girls and all my girls are young adults now. The youngest will be 21 in a couple of months. So I'm just like, time goes by so fast. So I applaud you, number one, for taking a step back and saying, hey, I need to invest in my daughter, my baby, instead of, because there's a lot of moms that get flack for staying at home or for reinventing their life when they become a mom, because they're thinking, oh, well, you still should be working. But I applaud you for that.
Yeah. And I think for me and for many of the women that I speak to and that I work with, it's not so much about making the choice of whether or not you continue to work or stay home, because I know plenty of women who stay home and still are not having or really enjoying their experience, right? For me, it was about learning to be present. And that was a skill I didn't really have. And it served me well in always having this kind of like forward-looking sense of urgency, get it done attitude in corporate, right? When I was there in my career. but that didn't work for motherhood. I wanted to be present. And so I had to learn how. And I did. And I really dove deep into that, practiced it myself. And now that's part of what I teach to other mothers, so that they can just enjoy this experience. I mean, it's such a valuable, such a blessing, right? And once
Mhm.
you go into this role, it doesn't end for the rest of your life. You will always be a mother. And
Yep.
so I thought, I really, really want to apply some energy, attention, and focus to really mastering this new role in my life. And so that's what I did.
So how did you learn that? I know it had to be kind of hard to get out of that corporate mentality to
Mm,
learn to be present in the moment. So take us through some steps on how you learned
yeah.
that.
So shortly after I became a mom, a friend recommended this coach to me, and she was a coach for women. She wasn't necessarily a coach for moms, but she was a life coach for women. And I looked into her, I had a conversation with her, and I was like, huh, okay, maybe this is what I need, right? Right. I had been to therapy before. I mean, even before kids, even after kids. And I mean, therapy is great and all, it has its place, but it's not frequent enough, right? And because it's not frequent enough, it doesn't necessarily change anything in behaviors or root cause. You just kind of talk about it while you're there, you get it out. But oftentimes we revert back to
Mm-hmm.
however we are, right?
Yep.
And so, and again, no knock on therapy. I think it's wonderful and has its place, but I really wanted to shift my mindset. Like I wanted to wake up excited to parent that day and just show up as best as I could for my family. And so I started working with a life coach when my daughter was a baby. And I got really, really fantastic results. Like the tools I was learning from her, and they were mainly all mindset tools.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of mindset tools that, oftentimes you don't really learn about unless maybe you're in a leadership position or you're really into sports or you have a background in like psychology or human behavior, which I didn't have any of those. So, I mean, I was in a leadership position, but I didn't get into this level of mindset like I did with this life coach. And so, what I was learning from her was really impactful. And I was like, wow, okay, this is like making major shifts, right? So then I started working with another coach and another coach and another coach. Next thing I know, I'm like hooked on life coaches. I'm like,
Just
I was just amazed. And it's not because one was, bad or not good. It was just I just wanted more. I was like, these
Mhm.
tools are incredible. And after a couple years of that, I was like, you know what? Somebody really needs to bring this to working mothers.
Mhm.
Like I sought this out for myself and I started to look at some of the coaches I was working with too. And I kind of had a critical eye, like, corporate like attention to detail. And I was like, I think I could kind of do it better than they can. Right. Like I can clean up these materials to look better. I could say it a different way. And
Mhm.
I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to leave my career and I'm going to be the corporate mom coach. I'm going to be the woman who helps other women where I was, who was struggling managing the career, the kids, the house, the husband, all the things. And I'm going to help them. I'm going to be that person that I had to kind of piece together myself. And so that's what I did. And so I would say the mindset tools, mindfulness,
Mhm.
right? Through meditation. I know that can be a trigger word for some people, but it's really not very scary. But there's tremendous, tremendous benefits in that is often overlooked, especially for mothers, about regulating your nervous system, right? We are on alert as mothers, right? Biologically, we are. And so oftentimes no one's really taught us the tools on how to manage
Mhm.
our nervous system, right? Or
Mhm.
to even properly deal with emotions, both positive and negative. And so I like to, I say when I work with women, I help them with their mental and their emotional wellness. in their day-to-day life, because they're showing up for very, very big jobs. They're showing up not only in their careers, but they're showing up as mothers and teachers and leaders for their children.
I love that. Now, when you decided you were going to go full time with this corporate mom coaching, what was the feedback that you got from your family?
So funny enough, everyone was pretty supportive, because they knew I was like totally into all this. They knew I was into personal development and working with coaches and all these things. It seemed like a natural next step. The scariest part, of course, was the financial component, right? Like giving up your big salary to start your own business. There's no guarantee. What does that look like? And so at the time, my husband and I, we basically created like an exit strategy where, we saved a lot so that I could leave my career in 2020. And so that's what I ended up doing. And it worked out really well. I mean, the first year starting a business, it's always the most challenging, but I was really happy with the results. And I got so much fulfillment out of it. So much. I mean, like more than I ever could have imagined, because I was doing what I love to do, and I knew I was helping people in a way that mattered, right? As opposed to like working in an Excel spreadsheet that goes to a meeting and goes nowhere, right? Like things that we deal with in corporate. So it was so fulfilling to me, and that really mattered. And each year I just kind of kept building and building, and went from there to more clients and corporate clients and all these different speaking engagements and all these things.
Now, you said you started it in 2020. Was it during the height of COVID or when COVID first hit? Because
it was
that's a trigger right there. The 2019.
I know it. I wanted to start it in the spring, like shortly after COVID had hit, but I didn't get there until the fall. But that was okay. I mean, there were still plenty of people who needed help.
Yeah.
There still are. I mean, there still are. I mean, so many people, millions of people really struggle with their mental and emotional wellness. And I dug so deep into so many of these topics and solutions surrounding it for the modern day working mom specifically, although the tools can really help anyone. So, that's kind of the background of how I got to, this place and where I am now.
I want to chat more about the tools that you use with your clients, but right now we need to take a brief commercial break.
People welcomed me, and they knew the pain of the journey that we'd been on because they'd been there too.
Other Parents Like Me is an online community, peer-led, for parents with kids struggling with mental health and or substances.
It's a space that's safe. Feels like I can actually share what's going on.
We offer 15 daily support groups per week and live speaker talks on Thursdays, as well as a monthly expert panel.
We also have a resource hub that has a toolkit. This includes over 1,000 articles, podcasts. There's a glossary with the most recent and relevant terms. And we have a directory that's been vetted.
The overwhelming feeling when we're sitting in a meeting and I'm telling my story and I see others shaking their head, tears falling. They understand this roller coaster and they're along for the ride.
And we are back chatting with Aimee, the corporate mom coach. Before we went to the break, you talked about all these tools that you learn and that you teach your clients. Can you, especially the work-life balance, let's talk about tools for balancing that.
Okay, so one tool that I guess theme that I see is, everybody wants to know how to manage their time better, right? Everyone's like, what do I do? How do I all of a sudden create more time in the day? Well, the reality is you can't, right? So everyone kind of focuses on the time management component or lack of it in their day-to-day life. And that's where they focus. That's where their attention is, on their lack of time. But there's actually another component that I think is actually even more important that no one really talks about. So there's the time management component, but then there's also the mindset management component, which is actually more impactful and more powerful than managing your time. Now, it's not to say I don't think I do. I don't think many people manage their time well, right? I think there's always opportunities for improvement in that regard, but that's kind of like easy. Like you can figure out where to streamline some things, right? Or cut some things out or say no or whatever it is, right? The more impactful part is the mindset management component. And no one's really taught us this, right? Like it's not really like in our education system. And so most people are just completely unaware that they even have the ability or the power to really control where their attention is going and what it is they're thinking. And so a tool that I absolutely love that I learned from a woman at the life coach school named Brooke Castillo, it's called the TFAR model. And TFAR stands for thoughts, feelings, actions, results. Okay. Thoughts, feelings, actions, results. And so what happens is, I'll try to explain this and give an example. So what happens is women will say they often feel stressed or overwhelmed, right? Or they feel like they don't have a lot of time. They feel stressed or overwhelmed. That's the feeling. Everyone's operating from like their feelings, from their emotions, which is totally normal because we all have them. And there's a range of emotions. And there's, both positive emotions and negative emotions, or I don't like to say good or bad, but we'll say positive or negative, right? Emotions. And there's a whole set in the positive category. There's a whole set in the negative category. And what can happen is that if you're not aware, right, of what's informing your feelings, you'll just automatically default to feeling however you're feeling. But what's actually informing your feelings is your thought process. It's your mindset, right? So your thoughts are actually informing your feelings. So in a situation around time management, everyone will say like, I don't have enough time, but that's actually just an opinion. That's actually just a thought. The fact is, and there's a circumstance line above thoughts, feelings, actions, result. The circumstance line is actually there's 24 hours in a day. There's 24 hours in a day and everybody has the same amount of time. This is a fact, right? But what happens is our thought process or our mindset places meaning upon these facts, which are actually neutral, right? So the fact is there's 24 hours in a day. It's not good or bad. It's not positive or negative. It's just, it is what it is. But we have these thoughts that create meaning against that. So people say, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough, right? It's a scarcity mindset, right? So when you're thinking that, and this is largely subconscious, right? You just default to this like that. It's largely subconscious, but when you think from a scarcity mindset, you're then going to feel low level feelings or negative feelings. So then it's going to cause you to feel stressed. It's going to cause you to feel rushed. It's going to cause you to feel overwhelmed. And then if our feelings inform our actions or our behaviors, which they do always, right? What kind of actions are you going to take if you're feeling stressed? Maybe you're going to rush around. Maybe you're going to be impatient. Maybe you're going to yell, right? Whatever it is. And then what kind of results do you get when you act or behave that way? Probably results you really don't want, right? And then it reinforces the original thought and it becomes this vicious cycle, this vicious loop. So just being aware of that model, being aware that like you're thinking, like more emphasis needs to be placed on the quality of our thoughts in a day as opposed to like the quality of our work or our home, because all that stuff will come after if you focus on the quality of your thought process first. It just has this tremendous ripple effect.
So you keep mentioning the scarcity mindset. How do we get out of that? Because I think 99% of people in the US are driven by that scarcity mindset. Like, I've got to go for the next thing. As soon as they accomplish a goal, they're not happy with the goal. They have to go on to the next goal. They're not sitting there and taking a breath and like enjoying the goal. So how do we get out of that?
So true. Okay. So first, what I'll say about that is you're absolutely right. That's how most people operate, right? Most people operate from a place of lack or negativity. But there's a reason for this, okay? So as human beings, we have what's called negativity bias, okay? This is what it's called in neuroscience. It's been highly researched. And basically, there are parts of our brain that, from an evolutionary perspective, we're always scanning for problems, right? Always scanning for problems and threats and, looking out for danger, okay? That part of our brain, it's called the reptilian part of our brain, the oldest part of our brain, actually has not evolved. But our species has. We have evolved as human beings. And so we're not necessarily, we don't need to be on the lookout for bears or lions chasing us anymore. We don't need to be on the lookout for, like threats from severe weather because we live outside. No, that doesn't exist anymore. But that trigger in our brain still does, which is why managing your mindset or even your brain set is really, really, really important. And so understanding that we all have a negativity bias, I mean, there's definitely a range. Like, as you know, some people are just like more negative or more positive than others, right? There's a range for this, but for the most part, it's how we were wired. But we also have this tremendous ability as human beings, as opposed to animals, to choose how we want our thoughts to go, to choose where our attention is, right? We can be creative, right? We can be imaginative. A human being could, type an email or decorate a room, right? But a squirrel or a dog cannot, right? So we have this tremendous ability to use our imagination or our mindset to kind of bring us up above out of that negativity, out of the negative problems in life. Okay. But you must be intentional. Must be intentional. And this is where mindfulness or meditation work is really, really, really powerful, because it gives you that space to just notice where perhaps your thoughts are going. And all you need really is that space to make different choices. So you can even begin to feel like, oh, I'm starting to get stressed or overwhelmed because I feel like I don't have enough time. Okay, what am I really thinking about this, right? And when you develop a mindfulness or meditation practice, you start to become more aware of what you're feeling and then what you're thinking that's really informing that. And when you become aware of that, awareness is the master discipline. When you become aware of that, you can then more intentionally choose a more useful thought to support you in feeling better. So you then go from a scarcity mindset around time to something more supportive, like there's plenty of time. There's plenty of time. I'm going to get done what I can get done. It's not to say you need to be celebrating like, I have all this available time. No, but maybe just something more neutral, right? And that can shift everything for you in that moment and really for the rest of your day.
I love how you said useful thoughts, because I think a lot of people, you're right, a lot of people choose to wallow in the negative thoughts and to kind of say, oh, I can't do this. So they don't even want to see a way out. They just want to sit there.
Yeah.
But having useful thoughts, and I've always heard it's not how you it's not the situation, it's how you react to the situation.
Yeah.
That's going to make the situation either negative or positive for you.
100%. And everyone reacts to things differently, largely based on our own triggers, which are largely informed by our early life or upbringing, right? Everybody has them. People are triggered by so many different things. So the key, again, through this mindfulness work too, is noticing the areas in your life that are triggering, right? If there's areas in your life where you're like, I don't like how I show up with this person or in that situation, or maybe there's a theme here, right? That's that inner work, but you can break past that. And in many ways, there's an element of healing to it as well. And when you do that, it actually has a tremendous ripple effect for your family and for your children as well.
what are some of the things? I know social media is huge, and social media is also a highlight reel. And I keep telling people it's a highlight reel because a lot of people don't post their negative stuff on social media.
Yeah.
But I know in recent months or in the past year or so, I've not unfollowed friends, but I've muted people because I'm just like, I'm just tired of seeing, oh, my life is so great, when I know, in fact, their life isn't great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I mean,
yeah, continue. Go ahead.
yeah, no, I mean, it's so true. And I think especially for, young kids, I mean, even I don't even feel like adults, it catches us sometimes too. Like we know that's not the full scope of life, right? But when that's what you see every day, your brain doesn't always register, right? And so it can feel like it can create this comparison trap, right? Which doesn't feel good either. So I think that's wise of you to unfriend or unfollow, or even just do like a social media detox. I try to do that from time to time and just like separate from it, because it isn't reality. It's just social media.
That is so
gonna
true. You just mentioned comparison. What about the mom guilt that moms get when they compare? Johnny is walking at 8 months, but my daughter is not walking yet, and she's over a year old. That's comparisons that mom get, and the mom guilt.
Yeah.
How do we deal with that?
Yeah. I mean, mom guilt is very prevalent, but it's also very optional. People don't realize that. It's also very optional. And so, in many ways, as it relates to mom guilt, what's really happening there is inherently women are putting this internal pressure on themselves to perform or achieve in a way that they haven't yet. And it's all done subconsciously, largely through culture, right? Largely through social media, right? All these things. And so, this is where it becomes really, really important for women to trust themselves, and to know that, they're doing everything they can. They're showing up as they are, and that's plenty, right? That's enough, it also comes down to like a self-esteem thing as well. Like, are you confident enough in your abilities to trust that, like, there doesn't even need to be a comparison? There doesn't need to be one. It's all created internally through your mindset, through your thought process. So if you get a hold on that, you'll then feel differently. Back to that TFAR model, right? So that might mean reframing some thinking. So if you're feeling guilt, just know that you have a thought process informing that. That's likely saying something along the lines of like, I'm not doing enough, or I'm not feeding enough, or we're not, I'm not practicing playtime with the baby enough, or whatever it is. I'm not doing enough tummy time, like whatever, right? You have to you have to learn to challenge your thinking, because we have this negativity bias that's always going to take us there.
Yep.
So you have to challenge it. So it becomes really important to, develop this this inner strength, or this inner resiliency, really to best support yourself.
Why do you think it's that as moms and as women, we are so hard on ourselves, more so than what we think other people think about us, when they're not really we're not even in their thought process, but in our thought process, they're thinking about us, and we're doing this wrong, or we're doing this wrong. Why are we our own worst critics?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that women are harder on themselves as men. I think women are harder on themselves in different ways than men. I think men are hard on themselves in other ways that a man could probably speak to better. But I do know men, struggle with things too in a very big way. But there's also ways that women and men cope with things differently as well. And but I would say, there's many reasons, but I would say the two main reasons is largely due to our culture, right? And the other is largely due to our upbringing. So, when we're young, we observe how things were done by our role models, by our mothers, by our grandmothers, by our fathers, our grandfathers, like everyone in our life, right? Our aunts, uncles, cousins, right? We're observing all these behaviors and interactions as data. And we're processing that and thinking about it of like, oh, that's the way things are. So then we get into adulthood and we have this lens in which we're viewing motherhood or working motherhood, and we're reconciling this lens, like, or we're looking at life through this lens and then reconciling it through the back of our mind, through our past, through what we observed in our past and through our own early life experience. And we're stuck reconciling the two. But the reality is we're in a totally different day and age now with a totally new set of rules. Oh, and by the way, you're a totally different person now too, because you're an adult and you're not 8 years old anymore.
Yep.
So, it's just this constant, and then we create all this, all this should. I say women are like shoulding all over themselves, right? I should be doing this. I should be doing that. I should be doing this, right? But that just creates so much pressure and angst that isn't supportive. It doesn't feel good. So what I help women with is to really be intentional of what they want their motherhood experience or their working experience or working mom experience to look like at this stage in their life, because it doesn't have to look like it did, unless you wanted to. It doesn't have to look like it did for what you imagined in the past. It doesn't have to look like what it did for your mother or your grandmother or whatever it is. We have this tremendous ability to design our future. But so many people, forget that we give our power away, right? So many people forget that we even have that choice, that ability, but we do in a very major way.
I love that. I love the fact that, yes, I think we do give our power away, and we need to say, hey, you know what? I want this way, and I'm going to make it work.
Yeah. And you figure it out. You solve the problem. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But we get stuck in our mind. This is why we have to manage the internal chatter. That's the thing we need to manage the most, is that inner voice, that internal chatter. When you manage that, not only do you get more of what you want, right? But then you feel more of how you want to feel. You behave more of how you want to behave. And then your results are better than what you had before.
That is so true. And I don't know if you know the backstory behind this. I told you the reason behind the name of the Chats in the Blog Cabin, but the podcast actually started because I was in a mindset challenge with a mindset coach, and I hate getting on and talking to people, and I hate doing lives, and I hated all that. And she said, well, come on, go. One of the challenges now, if you challenge me to do something and I know I'm going to win something, I'm going to try my best to try to win it.
Yeah.
That's the competitor in me.
Yeah.
She said, well, go. One of the things was you get a point if you go live and talk about one of your core values. And I'm like, ooh, I don't want to go live. Like, you know what? It's always easier if you go live talking to somebody else instead of just live by yourself. So I said, one of my core values is relationships. So I had a friend come on and we talked about ways to encourage a friend and talked about, relationships. And then it just bit. And I just started doing it after that.
Well, I love that. I love that. And it supports your core values. So you're in alignment with it. And this is a product of that. And it shows because you're doing what you love and you have an amazing podcast.
Yeah.
Oh,
see,
great.
But mindset is everything. Because before I was an elementary school teacher and I could get me in front of a whole bunch of kids. I could talk all day long off the top of my head. Wouldn't worry. Get me in front of a whole bunch of adults. Forget it. I wouldn't know what to say. I would be nervous and shaking and everything.
Yeah. But you changed that now.
Yep. So
because you went outside of your comfort zone.
Yep.
And you went outside of your comfort zone, and it's uncomfortable when you do that, right? It's comfy in your safe little comfort zone, like doing what you've always done, right? But at the end of the day, one of my coaches would always say, you never leave your comfort zone until you leave your comfort zone. Right?
Yeah.
Right?
That's true.
Yeah. Or nothing changes if nothing changes. Right? So you have to really push yourself to take that jump, to make that change, to do something scary. Right? And it's going to feel scary. It's going to feel scary. In my program, we call that the terror barrier. And so it feels scary. And when most people are up against that terror barrier, they're uncomfortable, they're nervous, they're scary, they're freaking out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when many people retreat because they're like, well, I don't like feeling this way and I don't know what to do with uncomfortable emotions. So forget it. I'm not like, I shouldn't be doing this. I'm not set up for this. So they don't do it, right? Think of all the goals and dreams and initiatives that are lost for that reason, right? But what you really have to do is you have to push past it. You have to push past the discomfort, right? Because on the other side of that, right, you create a new version of yourself. You create a more empowered version of yourself, a stronger, resilient, and now you have this new skill set, right? And because you pushed past it and you did it anyway. It's like Nike. It's like, just do it.
Just do it. That's right. That's so true. Because at that point, when you're so scared and anxious, people are like, I can't do this. And they stop instead of pushing through. What are some tips that you can give people to push through, to get through that uncomfortable feeling, to get through that barrier?
Yeah. So I think it's really important to have a goal or initiative that you're excited about, right? Like something that like you're really excited about. Like I really, really would feel good or accomplished if I did or became this, right? So because that's emotionally driven and people will do things oftentimes based on emotion, right? Subconscious, but it's emotionally driven. So you actually want to set goals or intentions that are actually really meaningful. And you actually want them to be pretty big. Because if they're big, then you'll get so excited about it that you'll be able to then push past any temporary discomfort in order to achieve it. If the goal isn't big enough, then you can kind of take it or leave it, right? You can kind of take it or leave it. And then when it gets uncomfortable, which it inevitably will, you'll often retreat because you're not that excited about it. So, your goals or your future, whatever you want for your future, whatever you want for your life, get excited about it. Think about it all the time, right? And then take the necessary actions to move the ball forward day by day by day.
That brings me to a point while you were talking about the 8-year-old earlier, about how we have one mindset when we're 8-year-old and one mindset as we're an adult. And then you were talking just a minute ago about being excited. An 8-year-old is definitely excited about the possibility of what's coming up, unless they're in a very, very depressing like state, or where they don't see any hope. But most of the time, a child has hope. So, what are some of the lessons that we can take from looking at children and taking lessons from them, because they can teach us a lot.
So many lessons from children. I mean, oh my gosh, so many lessons. I mean, children are really they're the epitome of living in the present moment, right? They're not worried about the past. They're not necessarily concerned about the future. They're just being here now, right? They're just living in the present moment, enjoying what is right in front of them. Not that they don't have, like scary moments or whatever. Of course they do. But for the most part, they're just in it. They're just in it. Whereas adults, I mean, that's like the rare occasion. Most adults are like, I got to do this, and this, right? And their mind is going like 10,000 miles an hour on to the next, on to the next, on to the next. They're like missing living their life. And so that was my main goal, actually, when I started all this work. When I had my daughter, I was like, okay, how do I be a present mom? Because I don't feel like I'm being present here. And this doesn't feel right, but I didn't know how to be present because I was always the kind of person who was like, go, 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 achieve, achieve, achieve. Works really well in corporate, works great for running a business, not great for parenting. Yeah. 2 different modes completely. So I had to learn. But I think, presence is probably the biggest thing that we can learn from our children. But then through that too, we learn patience.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We have to learn patience, which is something many people struggle with, many women especially. But that's why these mindset tools and these practices like meditation can really, really help support you with that.
That is so true. And I mean, because that's very, very important to have patience, especially if you're a parent, because you can lose it like that. I mean, you can have a bad day and just lose it like that.
Yeah.
Also, being a parent and a working parent, how important is daily routines? Because I know when my girls were little, it was important that we had a certain routine, a certain schedule that we kind of, not so structured, but just kind of a little bit of a structure so that we knew how to get through the day. How important is for routines?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a parenting coach, but I do, I don't know like all the necessary elements of how it benefits children. But what I've read and what I do know is that it benefits children. So everything I've read says, kids like structure, kids like routine. I think as human beings, we all like to know, what's coming after something, right? Or what we're doing now or what we're doing next. But we don't want to like live there mentally. We still want to be present. And so it also gives kids kind of like a guidepost of how their day is going, right? Particularly around meal times or nap times for like younger kids, things like that. And I think it helps the parents too. It really helps the parents because without structure, like everyone's kind of just aimless. And you don't want to be aimless. You don't want to be aimless with kids. You do want, unless it doesn't bother you. I mean, there's no like right way to parent or right way to do this, right? It has to work for you. If you don't like structure, if routine is like not your thing, okay. But also be mindful that doesn't mean that's not the thing for your kids either. So as parents, we also have to adapt and meet our kids where they are, right? Because as we know, all kids are different.
Yep.
Some kids might really, really like the structure. Some kids, it might not matter much at all. But as parents, it's our job to facilitate their growth based on their own design and based on their own preferences, and to really champion that in them.
That is so true. And especially if you're working and you're like, okay, I have to make lunches, but I may get up late or we may have a meltdown at breakfast, having that kind of in your mindset saying, okay, when I get home, this is what's going to happen. For the mom saying, this is what I'm going to do when I get home. How important is that schedule for that mom? Because that will help her so much with her mindset.
Yeah. I mean, some women don't have issues rushing around in the morning and throwing lunches together in the morning. I do, right? I don't like to be rushed in the morning. So if I can get ahead of it the night before, then I get ahead of it the night before, right? Because I've seen both sides. I've seen what mornings are like when lunches are prepared, and I've seen what mornings are like when lunches are not prepared. And I think all mothers can kind of get that, right? But there's not a one size fits all. You have to do what works for you, but notice your pain points, right? Wherever you're experiencing frustration or pain, that's your entry point to say like, okay, I might need to shift something here. I might need to do something differently here, or I might need to think about something differently here so that I feel better about it.
I love that because you're right. Not one size fits all. What may work for one mom may totally make another mom feel so fragile and frustrated that they completely shut down. So you have to find out what works for you.
Yeah, completely.
Our time is almost up. Aimee. Is there one last little nugget that you want to share before we talk about where people can find you at?
Yeah, I would just say, if you're a working parent, make sure to prioritize time for you every day, not when you have time. No, make it a priority every day, even if it's only 15 or 20 minutes. But I mean time for you, not scrolling social media, not watching Netflix, but just being with yourself. Okay. Being with yourself in a quiet place away from the noise, away from the demands, away from the technology, and just be with yourself. I'm not saying you have to start a meditation practice, although if you do, that's awesome because it'll change your life. But but just first start creating that time and space for you. And that's what I find many women don't even have that. They don't even make time for themselves. Or if they do, it's like, a girls' weekend once or twice a year. That's enough. We need daily time to reconnect with ourselves, right? So that all the other activities and demands and things don't take over.
I have one friend that works, and she always says that before she goes to pick up the kids and right after she gets off work, she just sits in her car for like 10 minutes, just sits there in complete silence and just doesn't do anything, just so she can.
Yes. Yeah. You got to remove the noise. You got to remove the noise. There's so much noise in our day to day at this point in our lives, especially if you have little kids. So much noise.
So much. So where can people find you at?
So you can go to my website at corporatemomcoach.com. On that website, I have a free self-care menu that you can download. It's my top 20 self-care activities for working moms. And also I offer free 30-minute consults. If you're interested in exploring more around coaching or working together in a one-on-one capacity, or to have me speak at your corporation or do webinars, I also offer that as well. But you can find all that information on my website at corporatemomcoach.com.
I mean, you have given us a lot to unpack and to think about. The mindset, number one. Thank you so much, Aimee, for coming on and for sharing your journey, because I think you learned a lot in the process of your journey that you want to share with others.
I did. Yes. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoy being here.
So guys, I will put in the show notes all where you can find Aimee, as well as where you can get that self-care menu, which I absolutely love. It's like you're going to a restaurant and opening up in the menu. I want this, and this. I love that.
That's right. Absolutely.
And we will see you on the next chats from the Blog Cabin.
Thank you so much. Bye.